Fourth grade lesson 9.1 is relate tenths and decimals. Tenths place and decimals. Not tens place, it's a little different. We'll talk. Our essential question is, how can you record tenths as fractions and decimals? Fractions and decimals are those in-between numbers. You know, fractions are in between 0 and 1, or whatever number they fall in between. They're not a whole number. Decimals are the exact same thing, just a different way of representing that value. So let's unlock the problem. Ty is reading a book about metamorphic rocks. He has read 7/10 of the book. You're familiar with fractions. If you broke that book into 10 equal chapters, he read 7 of them. What decimal describes the part of the book Ty has read? A decimal is a number with one or more digits to the right of the decimal point. So if you have a decimal point, we know that on this side we have the ones place and then the tens place, right? The decimal is to the right of the decimal. So we might have a 7 there in this point value spot, in this value. This spot here is the decimal number, the tenths place to be precise. So a decimal is a number with one or more digits to the right of the decimal point. We could have several going on and on and on, just like this side has ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, and on and on. This one has those place values too. They always end in a thuz, so you have to be careful not to spit on somebody when you say it, right? So we have one or more digits to the right of the decimal point, this direction, and you can write tenths and hundredths as fractions or decimals. They can be written either way. They represent the same value, just written in a different way. You're probably going to find yourself pretty good at the decimals, at least the tenths place and the hundredths place, which would be this place, the tenths place and the hundredths place, because you know it takes 10 dimes to make one whole dollar. Tenths place, this is really the dimes place. And you know it takes 100 pennies to make one whole dollar. This is the hundredths place. So anytime we have money that's in between dollars, we use coins, those are our decimals. So we just need to tie that information together with what we know about coins, and you'll make sense of this pretty easily, I think. So one way, so we can write tenths and hundredths as fractions and decimals. We needed to find out what decimal describes the part of the book Ty has read. One way is to use a model and a place value chart. As a fraction, we split this up into 10 equal pieces, the book up into 10 equal pieces, and we're going to color in 7 of those 10s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those 10. And we'll call that 7/10ths that were colored in. We read that as 7/10ths. 7/10 is 7/10ths, right? 7/10 is 7/10ths. So we have 7 in the tenths place. We have 0 ones, no whole book read. He's only read 7/10ths of it, and no hundredths, none there. So we have our decimal point here. So we would write 0.7, and we would read that as 7/10ths. Right, 7/10ths here and 7/10ths here. They are read the same way. 7 in the tenths place is 7/10ths. 7 over 10 is 7/10ths. They represent the same value, the same amount. It's just two ways of writing it. Use a number line is another way we can figure out how to write those as fractions or decimals. Label the number line with the decimals that are equivalent to the fraction and locate the point 7/10ths. Okay, 0 out of 10 is a 0 in the tenths place. 1 out of 10 is a 1 in the tenths place. 2 out of 10 is a 2 in the tenths place. Think of this like money. If you have 1 dime out of the 10 dimes it takes to make a dollar, you have 1 dime, 10 cents, tenths. If you have 2 dimes, 20 cents, 2 tenths. 3 tenths, 0.3, 3 tenths. 4 tenths is 0.4, 4 in the tenths place, 4 tenths. 5 tenths, 0.5. We know it's not a 1 or anything in front of here because proper fractions are less than 1. 5 in the tenths place, 5 tenths. 6 in the tenths place is 6/10. 7 in the tenths place is 7/10. 8 in the tenths place is 8/10. And 9 in the tenths place is 9/10. And then of course 10 in the tenths place, if you have 10 dimes, you've got one whole dollar, right? So it's 1.0. So you can see that pattern going on. That's there to help your brain make sense a little bit of this. So names the same as 7/10 is 0.7. 7 in the tenths place, 7/10. So Ty read 0.7 of the book. How can you write 0.1 as a fraction? Well, 0.1 as a fraction is 1 in the tenths place. So we would put 1/10 because it's 1. Oops, I need the pen. It's 1 in the tenths place. I ran out of room. I had to shrink that. Let's view another example. Tara rode her bicycle 1 6/10 miles. So 1 and a little more miles. What decimal describes how far she rode her bicycle? So you've already written a fraction as a decimal. You can also write a mixed number as a decimal. She did 1 whole, so this would be 1 whole, and then they split into tenths. Both are split into tenths, but we know 1 whole is 10/10, right? So we would shade in all of that for the 1 whole. And then 6/10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6/10 of the other side. So we have 1 6/10 is what we have there. 1 whole and 6/10. 1 6/10 is 1 whole and 6/10. So we would put 1 whole in the ones place and 6 in the tenths place, 1.6. And we read it 1 6/10. We can also use a number line like we did before, label the number line with equivalent mixed numbers. Now this is 1 and a little more, but not enough to be 2. So we have to zoom in on that number line, not between 0 and 1 this time because there is 1 whole. This is 1 and a little more. So it's in this area between 1 and 2. So we zoom in on this section here. So you see a 1 full and a 2 full. This is all zoomed into here. And then they split it into 10 equal pieces with that denominator being 10. We split it into 10 equal pieces. And we have 1 out of the 10 here. And that is 1 and 1 in the tenths place. The next one is 1 2/10, 1 and 2 in the tenths place. The next one, 1 3/10 is 1 and 3 in the tenths place. We would have 1 and 4 in the tenths place. That would be 1 4/10. Hopefully you're seeing this pattern here. 1.5 is 1 5/10, right in the middle, 1 1/2 basically. 1.6 is 1 6/10. 1.7 is 1 7/10. 1.8 is 1 8/10. And 1.9 is 1 9/10. 1 and 9 in the tenths place. So which names the same amount as 1 6/10? 1 6/10 is 1 6 in the tenths place, 1.6. So Tara rode her bicycle 1.6 or 1 6/10 miles. And decimals are a base 10 system, so if you have a denominator of a 10, that makes it easy to do. You always need to get it to, if you're going to translate them back and forth, you need a base 10 or a denominator of 10 or 100 or something that is a multiple of 10. Let's take a look at this. Write 1 as a fraction and as a decimal. Shade the model to follow. We want 1 whole. Well, let's shade that in. Okay, I have this whole box split into 10 equal pieces, and 1 whole is 10 out of 10, right? So I'm going to go ahead and shade in 10 out of 10. That is 1 0/10. So there's that. I have 1 and no more tenths that are left by themselves. Nothing in the hundredths place. That's for later. So my decimal is 1.0. $1.00, right? $1 and no cents. No change left over. I've got the whole dollar there. I don't need to put the change down. Let's look at the Sharon show just to let our brains adapt to this. Write 5/10 as a fraction and as a decimal. Well, as a fraction, 5/10, by now I think you're kind of recognizing how you would do 5/10. It would be 5/10, 5 out of 10. Now, how would it look as a decimal? Well, we have 10 equal pieces to make one whole. Of those 10 equal pieces, I'm using 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Trying to get 5 in there, okay? And so I have colored 5/10. So that is 0 whole. I don't have a whole amount. And out of that, 5 in the 10th place. 0 whole and 5/10 rods have been colored in. No hundredths rods have been colored in. So 5/10 can be written like this. Also could be written like this, if you notice this. 5/10, when you think of money, 5 dimes, tenths are dimes, right? 5 dimes is 50 cents. So this is the same value as that. The 0 doesn't change it. Let's write the fraction or mixed number and the decimal shown by the model. Well, look at here. I have 1 whole, 2 whole. So I'm going to put 2. And as a fraction, I have 2 out of the 10 left. 2 out of the 10 left. And that is, since I have a base 10 here, I can use the tenths place for the decimal. And I would have 2 whole and 2 sitting in the tenths place. Number 3, let's go ahead and write mixed number and the decimal shown by the model. So this is the part that they're wanting us to do. Okay, they've split this into 10 equal pieces. Remember, when we're dealing with decimals, these are multiples of 10, 10, 100, 1,000, like that. Not even multiples of 10. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say multiples of 10. 10 based numbers, 10, 100, 1,000. Those are the place values for your decimals. So I have 0/10, and then here's 5. So this is 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10. And if I went by the fraction, here I'm at 0.5, so I have 0.0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0 and 5/10, 0 and 6/10, 0 and 7/10, 0 and 8/10, 0.8, 0 and 8/10. So there is my fraction, 8/10, and there is my decimal, 0.8. You're just going to be doing a lot of this practice stuff for this, back and forth between fraction and decimal, so that your brain can adapt to these numbers, meaning the same thing, just 2 different choices on how you're going to write it.